So you got to give that out to receive it back.
And here in Atlantic Canada, we really have each other's backs.
Yeah.
Like we want to see each other succeed. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alicia. I really appreciate you taking the time and driving up. I know it was a couple-hour drive for you today.
Yeah, about 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours. That's a couple coffees worth of a drive for sure.
Speed limit, maybe.
Yeah, it totally depends how fast you drive. So we'll jump right in, kind of get a little bit of history from you. I know you're here talking about this business venture that you're working with a co-founder, Tracy. Tracy's last name? Tracy Roydy. Okay. And you two have kind of come together to offer a special package of both your sales experience and her marketing experience to kind of put something together to help small and medium-sized dealers and integrators.
Yeah, ideally, that is our main focus, is the small and medium-sized dealers, integrators, trades, encompassing all, essentially. But our whole program and everything that we do is niched to that market, because that's, well, we're the most passionate about small business, and we both come from the technical side for the last quite a few years, and we've seen there's a little bit of a gap in there. We're in the sales and marketing where our dealers know what to do when they get on site. They are very capable of doing the job, but to grow the business, they might be missing pieces of that puzzle that we can offer them and help them grow. So
okay, and the biggest part of that gap you're finding is the sales and the marketing side, where they've already gotten kind of a competency with installing these jobs and servicing them and building their customer base that way, the slow grind that they all know. And you've put together this company, the Mandorla Effect. And I'm excited to hear what that means, because intuitively I have no idea, but it sounds nice.
It's worth the Google.
Okay.
So mandorlaeffect.com is our website. And when we were talking about putting the business together, her on the marketing side and myself on the sales side, we knew just from experience that sales and marketing are like two peas in the pod. They go together. They're not meant to be in separate silos. They're not meant to get feedback from other departments and then build out, the marketing plan and then build out the sales plan. So essentially, when we were looking at our processes for marketing, and then we were looking at the sales processes, what we realized and what we knew was that they overlap.
Right.
And so basically where marketing starts to leave off, sales comes in, feedback from the field goes back into marketing so that they can start again. And so we took the two circles and basically combined them together in a Venn diagram. And that middle part is called the mandorla. And so basically it's an almond shape.
The shared kind of, I see. That's really cool. That's an interesting approach to the logo design too. I really appreciate that. It looks very premium.
I know. Well, that was the plan.
Yeah.
Especially being being small boutique style agency, we want to offer premium product. We want our client to come in and have a hands-on approach, that we're in the business with them, we're partnered with them. So our signature program is developed to keep the technician-led businesses in mind for that, because we know that they're time-starved.
Right.
And being a small business, they're usually capital-starved. So there's ebbs and flows, and so we can take that into consideration, and that's what we did when we were building out our services and stuff, so that we can work together with them.
You mentioned a lot on the website. I did some perusing, and you talk about kind of scaling smart. Now, when you're talking about scaling smart for those technical and those integrators, what is it that you're referring to in terms of what they actually have to do operationally? Like, is there a specific order or a set priority of exactly how to go about increasing their sales quotas and their knowledge base?
Well, once we go through like a discovery call with them, we usually get to find out where they are. Like, you can't make plan your steps or your your goals out if you don't know where you're starting. And so that's where we want to have, like, where the picture is now, and then where do they want to go? What are their goals? Every person that decides to go into business has a different plan or has a different goal for
what success looks like to them.
Absolutely, yeah. So we taking that into consideration, we know not everybody's starting in the same place. They might come in with a really great brand, have some marketing ideas, maybe took a marketing course in the past, or something was offered through their local business association, and that's great. They have some background, but what are they doing with it? Mm-hmm. Is it being effective? Is it going after their ideal client? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of these businesses and stuff start because they were an employee once. They got all of the knowledge and all of the know-how and all the experience, and they decided to break out on their own. Mm-hmm. So did they ever actually look at who their ideal client is? Are they getting the jobs or the projects that they want? So, or
just anything that comes along.
That's right. And it's busy work, right? It's filling them. It's providing them a bit of a paycheck. It's putting food on the table, but it's not necessarily what's going to scale them. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about scaling, it's not just about scaling. It's predictability. So can you predict what's happening in 6 months to a year in your sales funnel? And a lot of them can't because they don't know where or how to go after that.
Right. A lot of them receive the leads or something will kind of come to them because the security industry has been booming for at least 5 years now consistently. There's been no down season for most of them. So
for sure.
a lot of them are getting daily or weekly calls that are keeping them busy with estimating, designing, installing, rinse and repeat. And they haven't had to chase things down. But I guess what you're saying is what they're doing the type of clientele they want to deal with, in the sense that are they getting the acceptable margins to make it worth it and to build their business and scale it that way, rather than just being busy and then at the end of the week wondering why they're not, I guess, receiving the capital flow that they should be for all the work.
Exactly. And we've all heard the statistics of how business is risky, and after 5 years I think it's 80% of the businesses tank, and we all go into business knowing those risks. A lot of people who, have that entrepreneurial spirit and want to be their own boss, and for whatever reason, know that there's a risk to it. Mm-hmm. The thing is what we want to see is that when they get to that 5-year mark, they're not quitting or losing their business because they're completely burnt out.
Right. Because that often is what happens. They face an extreme burnout from constantly having to do every job. Mm-hmm. They do their own accounting. They do their own billing. They look after their own business's finances. Then they're installing. Then they're selling. Then they're waking up at 2:00 in the morning because they're on call because they're the only one there.
Yeah. So, and then they're wondering where they're going to get their next technician. And ideally, with scaling, their next technician, they want somebody that has the same amount where they can duplicate their efforts. Send them out on their own. Now, over the last few years, we know the market hasn't really provided a lot of skilled labor that can just be plopped into that, unless you're scooping them from somebody else, right?
And there's been a lot of that.
So increasing or scaling your revenues and having that predictability allows you to take on maybe less seasoned workers and then take the time to train them the way that you want them to. But you need money to do that, because then you have 2 technicians on site as opposed to 1 where they can work by themselves. Yeah. So in the end, your marketing and sales kind of lead you to everything. If your next step is if you're fine with the referrals and you're doing residential or small business or whatever the referrals lead you to, and you're happy right where you're at and you're getting enough to sustain your family's lifestyle, then perfect. If you're looking to scale that and go from self-employment to business ownership where you're actually building an asset larger than you, outside of you, then that's when we need to talk about what is your processes and what systems do you have for your marketing, for your brand, and then what are your sales processes.
So ultimately bridging that gap to get them from working in a business to be able to just be business owners and work on the business is kind of what you're offering with Mandorla Effect. And that's interesting because really you and Tracy, with your separate experience, both of you have over 20 years experience in your respective areas of expertise.
We'll keep it at 20 years.
Close enough. Close enough. We'll say we're rounding up, not rounding down. So with that being said, bringing those 2 things together to put together a service-based company to provide that expertise to these dealers, is very needed. Like you two needed each other to be able to create that organization in the first place. And then the dealers who are these small integrators really need that service to really increase the value of their businesses, even for the ones that, I don't know too many of them that have this mindset, but even the ones that are comfortable with their size, they're not looking to grow, even just understanding how best to sell to increase their margins so that, you have 1,000 customers. What's your annual revenue off of that from service contracts or RMR or whatever, and versus like what you're actually making for your margins on each individual install?
That's right.
Because they get to know each other a little bit, what each other are charging, but they don't necessarily know finitely what each other's costs are. They don't know how much revenue they're putting into training their technicians. Like they don't have the same advantages that large organizations have from trial and error over a long period of time. Because most of the guys, even the guys who are these freak successes like Vivint, where it's one guy starting door to door and then it just explodes. It's not very long before they get acquired by somebody else who's a big player who has all that in-house experience. So they have them hired out internally, and it makes sense for them to have somebody paid upwards of $60,000 to $80,000 a year to only look after their company's marketing. And you're basically doing it at a fraction of that cost to teach them how to do it themselves so that they're not dependent on your company, which is an interesting way to go about it. Like but it's good because you're bringing a lot of value to them. And they'll want to continue to use your services for other reasons because you don't just offer those courses. It's just kind of how you're rolling things out, I understand. But it gives them, at a fraction of the cost, the same opportunities that the big players have of understanding exactly what it is that they need to do for their marketing and how to sell properly, sell themselves, sell the job, and to increase the perceived value of their products. So that's a huge deal. Now, your own expertise, you mentioned again, is mostly in selling, but it was recent that you did the 100X Edge life coaching certification. Can you tell us a little bit about that expertise and how that ties in?
I saw that on your list. Of questions. So it's a funny story. I hired a business coach, and I was building out another business model, and I've had leadership, personal, professional development kind of as a side hustle up until 5 years ago for like 15 years prior to that. And so I had worked really, diligently and in that industry for a long time. And always loved it. Like always loved continuous education programs. If you had a financial problem, like you could look in a book and find some answers. And to paraphrase Will Smith on Oprah one time, he said, if I have a problem, I know the answer's in a book somewhere. And I'm like, that's basically how I've like kind of lived my whole life. And I'm raising boys to do this, like my two boys to do the same thing. Like if there's a problem, there is an answer somewhere.
That's a good philosophy to teach.
You're not the first the first person that ever experienced this, even though sometimes they might think they are. So I decided to get the life coaching course or the life coaching certification because some of my clients I felt like probably would like to see a certification on, at the end of my name sort of thing, like the letters. Yeah.
You have a ton of industry experience too, but yeah.
So I never really felt like I needed it until this point. And so I had friends in the industry from a long time ago, and they were offering their certification program through 100X Edge, and they're professional and personal coaches themselves. And I was like, hey, yeah, sign me up. So a friend of mine and I actually signed up for the course. It was 14 weeks back in the fall.
Wow.
Yeah, evenings and weekends, and you to do the work and take on some case studies and all of that, and to get the certification. So that's why I did it, and it was kind of to wrap everything up in a nice little, with a bow, like a nice package with a bow. Like now I have 20 years experience and a certification. But I think as everything pivoted into the new year, once I left my previous employment and moved into self-employment and business ownership, I decided like this is going to be beneficial to everyone. Like I can now take on clients, in the sales and marketing side, but also offer that coaching perspective to them. So because we're dealing with humans, so it's, Matthew, you're a business owner and, you want accountability, you want coaching, you want to set some goals, you want to know how to reach them, what steps we should take. We can break those down now. And I think that course just helps me offer that to people that want to have somebody that has certification.
Sounds like it's like empowering you to organize the information you already kind of have in a quantifiable way for the dealers, so they can kind of see it on paper. Like, these are your steps.
That's usually, and there's always a process and plan in place, and so basically helping them set their next goal or what they want to achieve, and just enabling them to be able to take those and then have an accountability partner on the other side. That was a huge part for me when I partnered with my business coach.
Honestly, like with this whole business coaching program, like I have to imagine a big part of what you're offering has to be employee relations as well, because I think, like, if I'm not mistaken, one of the number one problems a lot of these dealers experience is attrition. Like, if they get into the point where they hire somebody on and they train them from scratch, and then ABC dealer will come along and basically way overpay compared to what a small dealer is able to do, but the small dealer built their skill set up to the point that it makes them thirsty for that person, and then they go after them and take them because there's not enough skilled trades technicians around. That's a really difficult process and a very frustrating one, because what is it? Is it loyalty? Is it leadership? Is it management? Like, what is the core problem that's causing these technicians to kind of get invested into in one place, and then at what seems like first opportunity move on to a bigger player, or just even an adjacent player, someone of similar size, but now you're fully trained? Like, so is that part of what you're offering them, is coaching on employee relations as well? Because I think, based on talking to you, it should be.
Thank you. It's not on our list of services, but coaching is.
Yeah.
So it would really depend on what the client wants and where they're starting. So speaking on employee relations, I always think about like where the person, like, everybody has their own goals, their own personal goals, and there's a reason why that person took that position in the first place. So with company letter A, company A, so they sign the contract, they're going to go work for them. Maybe they're offering a pay that they can, feed themselves and pay rent or whatever. Then the next person, the next company comes along, offers them more money. So now they can, not just do their necessities, but maybe, go on a vacation, or so they're looking for more of the money. They're more money driven, financially driven, and that's okay, because everybody at some point in their life, that's where they're at, and sometimes multiple times through their life, depending. And so, but then you get employees that are looking for, opportunities to be promoted within. So is there training opportunities? Is there promotion opportunities? Being from Atlantic Canada, sometimes you would get into a family company that doesn't have places for you to move up.
Right.
So if if that employee is looking to grow their skill set and there's no place for them to move, sometimes at a different location is where it's going to happen.
What does that look like in terms of being at, like, we'll call it a mom and pop shop, but like a smaller dealer? Like, if you're the type of person, like you already mentioned, I'm used to doing all my own screwdriver time, I want to replicate those results so that I'm not so busy doing that. So I bring on an additional staff member, and now we're a staff of 4. We got somebody in the office answering the phones, a couple technicians, and whatever.
Yeah.
How can I manufacture an architecture that gives them that perceived value? It's not an illusion. I don't mean it that way, but what can I give them in terms of either like a title increase? Like, how do I navigate that with a staff member?
Well, I think there's a couple different ways, and one of it is having those conversations with them to see where they actually are in their life, because they could start out maybe single, and then a couple years later maybe have a status change. They could not have a family started, but then a couple years later a family change, and those are all really exciting times in people's lives, and they want to celebrate it, but they also have an innate need of responsibility that comes up with those. And so then they start evaluating where they are, and now it's not as beneficial to stay.
Right.
So then they start looking for other things. I'm not an HR person. I've dealt with HR, but I'm not an HR person. But I know that starting out with like your employees' goals and those things, like check in with them regularly, every 6 months. More than that, have conversations with them, especially with a mom and pop shop.
Yeah, you get that opportunity to get more face time.
You know what's going on in their life.
Yeah.
And those, as a business owner, when somebody says, oh, we're expecting, oh, congratulations, that should be a trigger for you to be like, okay, there's some changes, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because during that time, you have the opportunity to be able to support your employee and help them through like a transition in their life and keep their loyalty longer than them have to feel like they have to leave to go find something that's going to be better for them and their family. So I think that like the communication part of it is a huge thing, and just not sticking your head in the sand and just ignoring the flags that are there, right? So
I think the full benefits that they can expect to get through the Mandorla effect and kind of your package that you put together for them. You spoke a little bit about educating them on their margins and helping them understand how much they should be charging. I don't like to use the word can be charging, because they already think it's like, oh, you don't want to charge too much. Like, I don't want to take advantage. But ultimately, if you can't afford to put money into marketing and you can't afford to pay the technicians what you wish you could compared to the bigger players, that money's got to come from somewhere. And I feel like I've talked to enough dealers that they've been doing it as long as they have, and they don't typically give themselves raises in a traditional sense. Like, I take home X dollars every week, and that's the way it's been for 15 years, and it's not changed too much over that 15 years. And the economy in the past 8 years or so has exploded in such a negative way that we're all extremely busy, but wages have not kept up with that well. So now we're experiencing a time where you can hire a technician who has no experience. So my expectation is to not give them a larger pay, of course. They don't have any experience. They have to be with someone else. They don't know how to do anything. I've got to train this guy from scratch, show him how to use a drill. We got to navigate getting him tools, all kinds of stuff, whatever their protocol might be. But at the end of the day, finding the right timing of where those milestones are that now I can give him X amount of dollars an hour more is really hard for them to navigate, because they themselves don't really get raises that way, and they haven't operated their businesses that way ever. But this kid that they brought on can go flip burgers for $1.50 an hour less with no expectations beyond their working hours. And that's a crazy concept. So it's hard for them to wrap their heads around. But the kids, like, I'll use an example, and this is Googleable fact, okay? In Moncton right now, the living wage is $24.07 an hour. It's a living wage. So by standards of CPI, the Consumer Price Index, they say that for a single person, not like a dual income household or anything like that, because that's the only way this works. For a single person to afford shelter, food, and transportation, they have to work full time, making $24.07 an hour. And that's not hard to believe. It's pretty factual. The only reason people can afford those three things now is because of dual or even tri or quad income households.
That's right.
It's the only way. So when you look at that and you think about the fact that minimum wage here in Moncton, in New Brunswick, I should say, I think is like $15.50 or $15.60, something like that. Like that. So alarm dealers here will hire a technician with no experience at $18-19 an hour, give or take, somewhere in there. And it's hard for them to even pay that, because 6-7 years ago, that's what they'd be paying a technician who had some experience, right? Yeah. So there's such a paradigm shift on what the pay expectation is. So you've got this employer who's in this position where I feel like I'm overpaying you, and you've got the employee who's not making enough to survive.
Right.
And both of those parties are expecting the other one to be grateful. It's like, I'm sacrificing for you. Yeah. No, I'm sacrificing for you. So that's really hard to navigate that. So that you have a pretty big challenge ahead of you as far as kind of educating them the best way to increase their margins to kind of allow wages to keep up with inflation, because it's not easy.
No, it's not. And it's almost another full-time job, like another hat for the business owner to wear, is like keeping up with what is the movement in HR. Like, what is the movement for salary expectations? What can you offer for benefits? And thankfully, because I'm not an expert in those areas, I have a friend that's an expert in that area. So we are more than happy to be able to pass them on to somebody else that has the answers to those questions, or I can go find the questions for them, depending on the situation. So that's a big thing, because if they're looking to attract, employees and, skilled workers and stuff like that, then like they're looking for more than $18, $19 an hour. They're looking for at least that $24.07 living wage.
Just to survive.
Yeah. So, and like, to be honest, I was in my local McDonald's the other day, and there's a poster right there that says $16.50 an hour.
That's right. And they're paying above minimum wage. It just goes to show, like
at McDonald's.
Yeah, McDonald's. Yeah. You can literally make 1,000 hamburgers a week and forget tomato on 30% of them, and you will take home almost the same amount of money as the person that we're trusting the security, camera infrastructure, access control infrastructure, and they have all that responsibility. There's a lot to that. And
go home at night and be worried about something that they may have forgot, or some damage they did.
But even the pressure to continue to drive their skill set. Like, it's not done. Like, I don't know too many dealers in that small to medium size that don't try to kind of encourage their employees to learn, because there's only so much you can learn in 8 hours. And it's so diverse an industry that you might work on an access control system this week, but not again for 2 months.
That's right.
And it's just the way that it goes. So they really have to get versed up on all of the foundational information, understanding everything. So there is a kind of a pressure to learn on your own time. So just a little bit more than minimum wage, not enough to survive. And there's all this added educational aspect as well for them to navigate. So that's tricky business.
I mean, once you know how to make a quarter pounder, it's pretty much the same thing.
They've got the pictures in front of you. You just have to take the right thing and put it in the right thing.
Have I sold you on going to McDonald's and getting a job? Might be easier.
That is not the message.
Not at all.
But and again, this isn't to knock on those dealers, of course. It's because they're underpaying themselves is my main point.
For sure.
And you're never going to pay your employee who has a tenth the responsibility and pressure and risk that you do more than you're making. So there has to be an increase over time, and a lot of dealers are hesitant to increase what they're charging, because there is always a competitor charging less. And then, that's one of their things that's like a selling feature to them, is like, I'm not as expensive as X company.
That's right.
And so your whole thing is helping them see the value in what they're doing to drive costs up, which will have somewhat of a ripple effect amongst the rest of them as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the famous phrase of race to the bottom. So, and that's kind of what we've been seeing, is like there's so much competition, and the dealers go out and offer their value as to how they see it. And to be honest, dealers, the one listening, you offer so much value, like more than a salesperson going in, because as a salesperson, it's almost like the end user is like grabbing their wallet as soon as they see you walking in, where they're expecting like slick Rick, or sorry Rick, that's not about you, but like some slickster salesperson. And but a technician can go in and go, nope, you need to have the motion detector there. We're going to put the panel here because of this reason. We're going, you need your camera facing this way. We're going to give you a 6mm lens instead of a 2.8, and know the reasons. And they are going to take your word like it's gold, because you're the one that has that knowledge. Salespeople have that knowledge too, but we're there to take their money. Like that's essentially how people look at it. And that exchange has to happen. So it's either you go in as the knowledgeable expert in your field, and explain to them why they need this and what the value is, and why you're different than anybody else. then you get them to give them their money, or you have a salesperson that goes and does it and represents you. And believe me, you can have amazing salespeople that will represent you. You have a strong brand, you have morals and values intact with that. People go out and represent you all day long. You will find amazing people that will do that. The thing is that your knowledge sells way quicker than a salesperson going in. And you need to use that expertise and experience and go and sell on the value.
I think a lot of dealers, I don't want to speak for a lot of dealers, but a few that I've spoken to seem to understand that as fact, that people are more receptive to buying their products or services when they themselves are at the quote. And maybe that's why they kind of pull away from having like a traditional sales role where they're dedicated to selling. I've talked to a few dealers that they simply won't hire a salesperson. And if they have somebody who does any selling, it's not under the guise of selling. It's like they'll train them fully as a technician and spend months and revenue and train them as a tech, because techs make the best salespeople, and then they'll send them out to go sell, a day a week or 2 days a week. So based on your expertise, no bias for you as a salesperson, do you think that the best course of action for these dealers is to have somebody in place dedicated as a salesperson? Like what's the expectation with that, and what's it going to cost them?
Well, I think that, it's going to be different, just like they do when they're hiring technicians. Like it differs depending on the dealer, and the benefits and all of that come with it. But, at some point, like if that's your goal, is to like increase sales and have a sales team so you don't have to do it, then yeah, getting a salesperson is probably going to be on your list of things to do. If you're okay with doing sales and you want to go be the one that represents your company and, go do the sales and drive that vehicle, then you go do it. It really is different depending on what their goals are.
Right.
When it comes to, compensation and stuff like that, I think they shy away from some of it because they're not used to a sales compensation plan.
Yeah, everything that they typically shell out for an employee is a lot more traditionally trackable, where you've got billable hours, and that's the easiest metric. So when you've got somebody who's dedicated as a salesperson, who they sell, they're not being paid screwdriver time.
Right.
It is a lot harder just to understand, well, what am I supposed to pay them? Because they genuinely don't want to pay something unfair. But they also can't afford to pay something that they won't see the results. And now I've got to let this person go, and their livelihood's depending on me. So what's that middle ground? And I know it changes regionally, but here in Atlantic Canada, what's a reasonable range of cost you could start a salesperson out with some experience that makes sense?
I would honestly have to take a look at each one individually, because as a salesperson who's grown up in Atlantic Canada and specifically in Nova Scotia, I have worked from like a minimum wage or like base salary plus commission situation. I have worked for 100% commissions. So it depends on the person. Yeah. And depends on their risk management. So if somebody's okay with working 100% commissions and that drives them, then that's okay. Right. But if somebody's like, I'm more nervous about the fact that I don't have money coming in this week, but I have a lot coming in 2 weeks, like it's different, right? So they would feel the ebbs and flows of the business just like the business owner. Offering them a base salary just takes out some of that so they can focus on being, going and looking or doing the digging that's not going to pay them necessarily next week.
It's such a difficult architecture because, short of selling airplanes, it's hard to want to do 100% commission because you need to have a consistent flow of sales to, and you want to have some stability and job security and make sure I'm going to be able to eat this week if things don't go as planned, or if I get sick and I have to take a few days off work. That could be very damaging for a salesperson. So there's a lot to that as far as unpacking. You're absolutely right. Now, in the type of compensation model we're talking about, and we're not going to need to get into specific numbers. I see your hesitation to give that. It's fine. But when we're talking about the type of model, is there a specific model that works best for the integrator type relationship? Like, should it be a base salary plus a percentage of commission, and what does that look like?
I think that what we would have to take a look at to start off is to see what kind of clientele they have initially. If they are based on mostly residential, which I know a lot of our dealers in Atlantic Canada, they don't focus in that area for a few different reasons, but let's just use residential or small business specifically. So residential, maybe like a one-of restaurant or, a pet store or whatever, like a independently owned, then it's a one and done situation where the salesperson sells that and it's finished. Now they starting to get into other areas where it's like maybe they're doing more account management or multiple locations or larger, commercial projects. Then that takes more time to come to fruition at the end. So that's when that base salary would come into, like in that commercial sector, enterprise, government, like that sort of thing, because they need to be able to manage and go meet with those people, do the legwork and everything, but it might not turn around for like 12 months.
Yeah, there's a long process there.
Yeah. So if a dealer comes to us and we're looking at like, okay, they want to hire a salesperson, we need to look at what their base is,
what the target market
their client is. Yeah. So do you want to focus on the small business where it's like you go out and do 10 installations a week or whatever? Then that's a quicker turnaround. So you could make it more commission heavy versus base salary heavy. So it would definitely depend on the way it's structured. It's also going to depend on what their goal is for in 5 years. Do they want to stay in resi small business, or do they want to start going after commercial?
Or even sell their business altogether.
That's right.
Focusing more on just increasing that monthly revenue. Yeah. That's a very good point. I can see how it would vary so much even in a region because of the fact that one dealer and another could have a completely different strategy on the, because you could have one dealer that's selling only large commercial systems and the average cost of an installation might be $20,000+, and then the residential side where you get your 3 months free monitoring and $500 down and we're in and out and it's done, and no shade on either way. Like, everybody's got their strategies to make it work and put bread on the table. But yeah, I wonder, last thing I'll ask you on commission is still not like a specific quantifiable target, but I'm wondering, because I've heard this question from a dealer specifically and it's coming to mind, if you're paying a person a percentage of commission, is it typical that might be like a variable rate where the more that they've sold, it's an increased percentage value or maybe a decreased percentage value? Like if you sell something worth more than $25,000, that the commission percent goes up or down?
So more like a sliding scale sort of thing. Yep. Or like a step commission rate. So yeah, like if I in one of my employments, if I went out and sold something, let's say $1,000 or less for the whole product, product and service, then it would be a certain 10%. And then, but if it was over, $2,500, then it would go up to like 15%. So I would get more because I sold more on that. So the same stuff is happening. You're selling more product, but you're going to the same site. You're sending the same amount of technicians. You kind of already have your sunk costs covered, whether it's $1,000 or $2,500. It's just now you've sold more product,
right?
So of course some installation times, but
and your support as a salesperson is going to increase with increased value, of course. Yeah, and salespeople work 24/7. Like every salesperson gives out their personal number because there's only so many ways you can differentiate yourself, and availability is the thing that most clientele will complain about. I've been trying to reach so and so, and they sold me this camera system and I hate it, and they never help me. And it's like, well, I'll give you my cell number. Here's the key to my house, and you come by, here's my Wi-Fi password. So it's and
it reaches the road, so you don't have to come in.
You come on in and send me a message.
Yeah, and that's the thing. As a salesperson, it was like, I want it to be so easy to do business with me. Like if you chose on a Saturday night that you wanted to do business and you sent me an email on Saturday night, you might not get it back Saturday night, but maybe Sunday morning, depending. And that's just the sales mentality, and that's why it's hard to like kind of figure out like, well, did they work 40 hours this week? Oh, if they're worth their salt, they did.
They worked more than 40 hours.
Because the mental load, if they've bought into your business and your service and they're there for you, they are taking that on. And so they're thinking about, their sales, but essentially your business on a Saturday, like that's just how sales people work.
Yeah.
So you will hear it from like all different industries where, like one of the insurance agents that I deal with, like she's like, I have my phone, you have my personal number, and she's sending emails and taking phone calls while she's on vacation. Not that that's always a good thing either. You definitely have to have boundaries.
You have to have boundaries, and absolutely, you need to be able to have a mental reprieve of some kind. You
absolutely.
Especially when you're dealing like as an integrator, selling for an integrator. If they've got more than 1,000 customers, and you're making a good effort to be in contact with a lot of those customers that want to have some sort of open negotiation at some point, even just to check in, see how they're doing. All those people having your number, you're going to be constantly like, something happened here this weekend. We need a backup video, but we don't know the password of a recorder, or I don't understand how to do this. We need to change the code on the keypad, and they get those contact calls, and you're supposed to refer a lot back to the office so that service work is generated. Right. But the problem is with a lot of salespeople, I find that they typically can not necessarily be people pleasers, but they want to be there for their customers. So when the customer's got a problem, it's instinctual that I have to solve it. So they're going to, here's what you need to do. I checked your file. This is the password. Or I'll swing by and I'll show you how to do that again. I know we talked about that and it's been a while. And so some of that revenue slips through the cracks in a way that way. But I don't know if that's necessarily overall damaging to the dealer or if it's a pro. I think that's one of the benefits of dealing with a small integrator is you can have kind of more of an open dialogue, and you really can't have it both ways. You either have to be a small company that you don't necessarily always have the best price points, and you can't always give them the best pricing strategies in terms of what you're able to do all up front or whatever. But where you can excel, that the bigger players typically cannot excel, is your service.
That's right.
So if they love you and they love dealing with you, they'll deal with you. They'll pay more. They'll accept that. But a lot of dealers want to be the most inexpensive and give them their everything. I want to be the best.
So the quickest way to burn out would be to put yourself out there and not get paid for it. There has to be an exchange for your service, and so if your customer, if you can't sell your value to them because you're going to be available for them, like maybe some of the larger dealers aren't, there needs to be something in it for you too. You can't do everything for free, or we're going to be talking in 5 years and it's not going to be a great story. Yeah,
you'll be part of that 80% that just didn't quite make it.
Yeah, and it's just the burnout because now you're doing it for free, and then your customers feel like they expect it because you've been doing it for free. It's kind of it needs to be beneficial for both parties. I always try to enter into any deals or negotiations with it needs to be win-win for both. If it's a win for your customer and a complete loss for you, then that might not be your best customer.
That's right. Yeah.
So, and you're going to be, begrudgingly looking at their name on your phone and be like, again.
Are you really going to give them your all when you're giving them your all and not getting compensated for it? And for them, they'll, as a customer, regardless of what they're paying, they'll treat you the same way. They'll demand everything they can from you. So, and if you give it to me for free, you're going to give it to me for free. You're not going to give me a lesser service because you chose not to charge me. Right. So that's kind of like a difficult thing for them to get into.
Yeah, there's definitely some hard conversations and negotiations in that case, and making it very clear as to what the boundaries are. And if you have customers that are high need, the high maintenance require answers within hours, that sort of thing, then you do need to roll it into some sort of a package, because that may not be you that responds. It may be your technician that you just hired that you need to have on call or whatever. Like, and you can't be going in the red because of that.
No. And the other thing is, like, everything that you're doing today, when you're building your integration business into a business that is an asset, the whole point for a lot of them is that it is something that can be liquefied at some point. You can sell that corporation to someone else, or just your accounts, whatever it is. People don't want to pay for the cheapest accounts going. Like, if you're charging your customers the cheapest monthly rates for the monitoring, or you don't have any service agreements with any of your customers and they don't expect to see you unless they ask, those are lower valued targets. And just because one company might pay X times RMR for these specific ranges of revenue doesn't mean they're going to pay that for your company, because the bigger companies that kind of gobble up these smaller ones, they already know. They know how they operate their business, and that they're in for these types of little headaches. So that Jim always used to answer on Saturdays and he'd just swing by on his way home, and it's tough even for integrators that have sold their business. I've talked to a few dealers that sold to a bigger company and came to regret it because they didn't realize how little control. They didn't like having to have those discussions with these people in their community that, ever since you sold to so-and-so, I can't reach anybody and I hate this friggin' thing. And now they're like almost embarrassed. And some of them will just, after the non-compete ends, they'll go out and start up again because they feel that desire. Like, I got into it to help people and I'm not doing that now. And my name's getting destroyed and I want to get out there and recoup that.
Yeah.
And
not every time, but sometimes.
Not every, of course, a lot of them really have a good handle on that and kind of keep boundaries, which is exactly what they should be doing. But the whole purpose of actually charging for your time and driving value, like, not saying you can't do someone a favor.
No,
absolutely, because that's why you're doing it. At least I hope. Like, I hope a lot of them are doing it because they want to help people. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right, exactly.
You know? I want to help people. It's just I recognize that at the end of the week, I've got to eat too. Yeah, and that's the way they need to treat it. So, if you're struggling to operate your business or to bring it to the next level, it's okay to charge more. You're not undercharging, you're not overcharging, you're undercharging if you can't have the trajectory that you're growing.
Well, and your customers that want that service will find you. Will pay more. But right now, they're, a lot of the times, the dealers or whoever's going in representing, it's like the customer's first objection is, oh, it's too expensive. No, it's not. No. Because I've worked from every level. Like, I've worked in integration. I've worked in distribution in a different industry. Like, I've seen how distribution works. And then I've worked in the manufacturing side of things. And so I've seen all the levels of, like, where the margins are being made and, like, how everything moves through. The dealers are the ones that see the end users. We do need that feedback. If they're all coming back and saying it's too expensive, then there's margins somewhere that need to be tweaked. However, if it's their first objection to you, it's usually not their objection. It's usually they don't see the value. And so we want to teach people that the value that they provide and sell it on the value. So if you're selling something that's $10,000, they need to see $20,000 in value.
Yes.
So we want to help put that sales process together with you so that when you're marketing your business and then you're going out there and you're selling and you get that objection, you can understand how to handle it instead of going back and then seeing where you can, sharpen your pencil on your end and then going back to distribution and getting better pricing or going back to manufacturing and getting project pricing. Like, they're all there, but we're all racing to the bottom and everybody's doing it. Everybody's selling the same products. You need to distinguish yourself differently. So if that's, the value add of your services, what you're providing and all of that, and you put your price up because of that reason, then I think that's a benefit for everybody because it's increasing your margin. You're able to hire more people. You're able to get another van on the road. You're able to take off maybe one of those hats that you're wearing every day and then just manage it from the outside as opposed to having to be on site all the time and be the person all the time. So it's like we want that for the whole industry, and we see it across all the trades, like where they're busy, and they have projects one after the other. But how does that solopreneur, how does that solo person that wants to break into, being the business owner, how do they go from a one-person show to 10 people?
I'll tell you how. It's the Mandorla effect, and that's exactly but in all seriousness, it's really amazing what you're doing, because again, like, you're gonna bring so much value with this, and I think what would be a good idea is to give an opportunity to some of these dealers, because I think you're giving like a discounted rate for your launch, right?
We are.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is the perfect opportunity. It's never going to be as inexpensive as it is right now to drive all that value. And again, like, what is the official launch already happened? Like, are you operational? When can they access your services?
Like right now. We launched the website a couple weeks ago. Probably 2 weeks ago today. And so that went live. We have everything, everything's ready to go. Basically we're enrolling people now. So, but for the summer, we're doing a rolling registration. So essentially we'll continue to enroll people under the special summer pricing. My suggestion is don't take the summer off. A lot of people want to, it's the summer, they go to the cottage, they do all that, they just want to do their work and then just go outside. I totally get it. I live in Atlantic Canada. We only get 3 days of good weather. Yeah. And right now I'm sweating, it's warm in here.
There's AC on and it is hot.
I know. We get first heat wave of the year. Yeah. So, and the thing is that I implore you, just don't take the summer off. Go and get the information, put the systems in place, learn what you need to learn. So come September, you're that much further ahead, because everybody else takes vacations in the summer off. Then all of those contracts and all of those quotes that you're waiting to hear back from won't be, decisions won't be made until September.
If you use your network to connect with other people in your same industry, which is the wise thing to do, you get the opportunity to learn some things, both positive and negative, about your competitors and your friends in the industry. And you can only learn so much so quickly, right? I can only make so many mistakes before I go bankrupt. That's just the way it works, right. So if I can learn from other people's errors and omissions ahead of time,
for sure,
that has huge value for me. And I think a lot of them are thinking that they're too busy to use that as a resource in that manner, or don't know how to. But the amount of people I've talked to that won't go to the commercialized events, like an appreciation event from a supplier, or just a golf event from Canassa or whatever. That's not a dig on you, because I know you said you're not going there, but for a lot of the dealers,
it's not because I don't want to.
No, exactly. That's the difference. It's not because you don't want to. But a lot of the dealers, they'll make it a point to say, I don't waste my time with that. I don't go to any of that. I'm too busy.
Yeah.
And it's the amount you could learn from the people that you network with there, because you learn your charge, because ABC company is charging 30% more per hour than you are. It's good to have a conversation with those guys. Are you guys busy? Oh, you have the same amount of technicians that I do. Okay, similar client base, but you're charging so much more. Well, what kind of market are you in? What's the main type of customer that you're targeting? Same as me. And now I'm learning some things. So it's okay, there's some margin there that I'm not seizing that I realistically could be. And I'm not saying increase your prices 30% just because Joe is. I'm just saying that there's a lot you can learn from these people, because the security industry is so collaborative. I think maybe that's another part of it, is they think that they'll go there and it's their competition. So there's this perceived hostility. Yeah. But it doesn't seem to exist in the sector. No. And maybe that's only on the East Coast. I don't know if the West is the same way, but here in Atlantic Canada, we really have each other's backs. Yeah. We want to see each other succeed. There's not even some of the bigger companies, they don't go around and just say, let's go squash these guys. No. Their whole goal is to drive growth and get bigger at whatever cost. But they don't want to see anybody squashed. That's just a byproduct.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is that it's great to be competitive. You're competitive on the ice, in beer league, or you're competitive, in your softball league, that sort of thing. But after the game's done, you should still be able to shake hands and
good game.
Go for a beverage.
Yeah.
You know, like you're still friends afterwards, especially I find in Atlantic Canada. And if you have ever had a conversation with me, it's not 6 degrees of separation. It's 2 to 3 degrees. Like if I don't know somebody's friend or cousin, then like I'm out of the loop.
Yeah.
Like so it does make it hard for, new companies to come in and get a foothold because of that. But also, you can't. I just never went around burning bridges.
Yeah,
No. Because that was always my thing with any company that I worked for, and I've said it to my dealers many times, is that I'm never going to steer you wrong just to make a sale. Because if anything was to happen in the future, then I'm still your neighbor. So I value that, because I'm still going to be doing business with you in another aspect later on, So it was really important to me that my customers knew that, what I tell them, I'm not going to tell them just so I can get an extra few bucks on my paycheck. Like it's not worth that for me,
It's short-term success. It's not anything long-term mindset wise. So
So compete on the projects. It's healthy to compete on the projects. It gives the best value to the end users. But be willing to go out and like understand and learn and go get the information at the shows. Go find, the products that you're using or you like using, and find out how you can get your technicians trained on it. Because I feel like that is such an underused resource, is that every manufacturer provides training. I can't think of one that wouldn't provide training if you are seriously interested in leading with their product. And little pieces, like little tips and tricks from their systems design engineers or whatever, like those little tips and tricks will save you time over the long haul and save your technicians time. And then once you start to multiply that, that's where little bits of margin will come in as well. And so the more knowledge that your technician gets, the more valuable they become. And then appreciate them.
Yeah, of course.
And give them a raise. No.
But that's big the thing. One.
But that's the thing, like invest in them, because it was always like our conversation previously was, we talked about just a continuous education and stuff, and like, a technician that you hire comes in and you train them and you invest in them, and then they go somewhere else. Like, what do you do? Well, I always was under the understanding that, you invested in them and they left. What if you decided not to invest in them and they stayed? Like, which would you prefer?
Yeah.
So I think I would rather invest and build that person up so much so that they feel like they could go take on the world somewhere else. And be that cheerleader for them. Yeah. It's not personal towards your company.
Yeah. And if you have the right culture, you're going to have more than one of those people. You're not going to, because I think that a lot of people might interpret that to say like, oh my God, like I get them so foundational to my business's success and they're going to leave and you're telling me I should be happy. But it's not that. Like it's that your whole team is kind of cheering each other on and growing together to everybody is going to become successful in their own position. And I see some companies that, at least based on how they market themselves online, have a very successful company culture. Like they're very involved in their communities. And I think that was actually a point that you touched on your website, is about businesses that grow, kind of ripple out into the community in that type of way. So
for sure.
It's a really positive impact. And a lot of people don't appreciate the effect that a small business has on their community. And it's not until those opportunities kind of present themselves that they can kind of make a difference there. That whether it be donating to the food banks or different community drives, or even just a fun clean up the community event where they and their employees will go out and pick up garbage off the highways and stuff like that. So people do that. It's really cool.
And it starts with their leadership.
Yeah. It's not a dealer of mine, but I see Northeastern Protection Services is always doing something.
Oh, for sure.
And they're so good about posting about their employees, and they really seem to be like cheering for them. And I really respect that. Like, because it's, what do they have to gain by putting this employee in my feed to tell me how good of a job they're doing.
For sure.
It's not, I mean, at face value, it's not serving me, but how that employee must feel being recognized publicly by their company's leader, that culture ripples down, because then you start to see that, well, okay, I am cared for here, you know, and then there's some perceived sacrifices that I might be more willing to make, that if somebody comes along and offers me $1 an hour more, that I'm not leaving. Like, Roger cares about me. Like, people here care about me. And that's what you want to see.
That's right.
I'd love to see that across the board.
For sure.
That's
and I can think of multiple companies just in the last few seconds that I've seen them as a company and as an individual go out and put into their community time and time again, year after year. They do the same things. And there's always going to be those people that don't appreciate you. They just don't worry about them.
Yeah.
So, but there's those people that may not say anything, but do appreciate what you do. And you need to do it for, you know, for you and what it gives you, because one of the leadership people that I've like followed over the years, he always says, you got to give happy to get happy. So you got to give that out to receive it back. And so, like, I mean, how many times, like, have you gone and done something for somebody else not expecting anything? It made you feel probably just as good doing it, you know? And that's, you know, it makes you want to do more. And so, and I just, like I said, like, I want helping small business owners grow. It provides that stability in the community so that they can get to a point where they can get out of their head, get out of their business a bit, and then see where they can go help other people. And they can't do that if they're in a survival mode all the time. Right? And so let's get them past that survival into where they have predictability, they have stability, where they can actually start to see outside of their own organization and then actually be able to reach out to their communities. So.
Well, I love that. I love that. This seems like a good spot to leave with just my closing signature question here. I'm going to give you an opportunity. You're going to look into that camera right there, and you're going to have 30 seconds. You can say whatever you want to the dealers in North America. Okay. So this could be... This
is a big deal.
This could be advice. This could be a comment. This could be anything you want to say directly to our network.
Okay. So if you feel like you're in that point that you want to grow, but you don't know how or what the next step is, then reach out and let's have a conversation. Because our biggest goal is, and that's why we're running our promo all summer, is to register as many of you to get you guys going on the right step and having an actual strategy and plan in place. But until then, I'm going to give you 3 things. 1, pick up the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's 100 years old by Dale Carnegie. Read it a couple times. The other one is The 5 Love Languages. Sounds kind of corny, but you will learn so much about your employees, what makes them tick, how they want to feel appreciated. The third one is Personality Plus, is learn the personalities of your employees, learn the personalities of your end users, your customers, your vendors, and just understand how you can work together better. And one extra thing is the next time that you're going into a sales meeting or going in to quote a customer, going in to estimate, going on site, be enthusiastic. Those are the 4 things. 4 things, you get an extra one. So be enthusiastic. That's like one of the first things is people buy stuff from people who are excited about what they're selling. And so if you're going in and kind of Eeyore like, oh, I have this and I sell motion detectors just like everybody else. If you're more enthusiastic about the benefits and value of your company, they will buy from you. Be enthusiastic.
I love that. 4 separate things instead of 1. Yeah. And that's just the way that Alicia operates her business. So keep that in mind when you're considering Mandorla Effect, that you're going to buy 1 thing and you're going to get 4. Okay, so we'll leave off there. Thanks again so much for coming in, Alicia. Appreciate the time. We'll have you back again. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I'll bring Tracy next time.
Excellent.
So, all right.